Welcome everyone to our session now on, sorry, I'm just reading my notes here, the impact of blockchain and artificial intelligence on Africa. I'm Andrew Nevin. Most of what I do is with PricewaterhouseCoopers. I'm based in Lagos the last 10 years. I'm delighted to be joined by a great panel. We've got one of our panelists we'll introduce in a minute on there. We've got Diana, who's trying to unmute herself on that. So the typical technical challenges we find on this thing, and we're just waiting for Jalak as well to join. So this panel is about, as I said, blockchain in Africa, the intersection between blockchain and artificial intelligence. We're very lucky to be joined by Mark Arthur, who is the CEO of Pi, which is an incredible company that in a sense tries to combine those two ideas, blockchain. So what I'm going to do in the Diana, of course, I hope we'll have her shortly, but I want to start with Mark. If you could just explain your, I mean, I've read the stuff on about your company on that, but just your vision of how blockchain and AI come together in Africa to really make life better for many people, particularly those at the bottom of the pyramid. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you so much, Andrew. And I think that before going deep into that, there is a reason why there are certain factors that have made it absolutely necessary, at least for me, to fill the need of combining both technologies. And again, before going into how Africa's financial services industry could leverage blockchain and artificial intelligence to stand out, it will be worth summing up some of the problems that Africa is currently facing. And one, Africa is the world's second largest and second most populous continent, with a population nearly 1.3 billion people in 2020, and out of which 600 million have no legal identity and as such are not in position to open a bank account. And out of the 600 million adults with legal existence in Africa, only 295 million have a bank account in 2020. Less than 15% of adults with a bank account in Africa have a credit score that cannot justify long-term loans such as mortgage. And nearly 85% of those adults with bank account in Africa are marginalized when using traditional credit scoring systems such as those from most of the companies that we know, and which normally consider applicants with no credit history very high risk. And last but not least, Africa has a high concentration of people with zero credit history. So answering or trying to answer these questions are likely to somehow help provide access to financial services to the next billion people in Africa.
Okay, so we're going to stick with you unless we just, Diana, Jalak, I see you both on the screen there. I hope you can unmute yourself. Jalak, can you hear us?
I can hear you, yes.
Okay, welcome. Mark got us a bit started there, but we've got Jalak. I'm just looking at my notes here. The thing about Jalak Jobanputra that's amazing is she's been been involved with, I'll say BTC or Bitcoin, but also blockchain for a lot longer than many of us, including myself. So we're really looking forward to her insights. I know she's been heavily connected to Africa, certainly a long time ago, more than 20 years ago. Maybe you could just take 2 or 3 minutes to just introduce yourself, and then we'll get into the subject of how blockchain and artificial intelligence are going to benefit Africa.
Sure. And I'm going to date myself by saying I was actually born in Nairobi, so it was over 40 years ago that my initial interactions with Africa started, and so it's always kind of been near and dear to my heart in terms of all the potential that resides on the continent. So I've been a VC since '99, actually. Started off before that on Wall Street doing telecom and tech and media investment banking in New York and London. And then 99, moved out to the Valley, invested for Intel. I was always kind of the first to raise my hand to do deals outside of the US, which was very uncommon back then. And at the time, there was a lot of activity in India, Latin America, Southeast Asia. And I feel like it's really in the last 10 years, and those of us familiar with Africa have always known about not only the favorable demographics of the continent, but just the raw talent that resides on the continent. And so I'm I feel like the last 10 years have been pretty transformational in the rest of the world, understanding that. We have a few portfolio investments on the continent. One is BitPesa, which is now called Aza. So one of the first companies to really leverage blockchain technology for more efficient financial services and transactions. And then the other is Andela, which is very different in a lot of ways, but I feel strongly that the opportunity to learn software development and really harness local talent is also key to growth in any region. So 40 portfolio companies total, and 70% of them touch the Bitcoin, crypto, and blockchain sectors, and the rest are along AI, machine learning, and IoT.
Okay, so let me stop you there. Let me let Mark jump in here. So you've got your company that you started that you started it with the idea of combining AI, Mark, and blockchain into something that would be useful for the bottom of the pyramid. Can you let people know what you're up to at Pi?
Yeah, so we're a venture fund, so we invest.
No, sorry, Jalak, I want to go to Mark.
Oh, sorry.
We're going to come back to your companies in a minute. Mark, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, Andrew. Well, Aaron, basically, I started this company some 10 years ago, and I felt that there were a number of unaddressed issues on the market, and that could be, that would be crucial really to go into and do. And the problem I had at that time is that there was not really a compelling technology on the market to be able to, to achieve what I wanted to do. And Bitcoin was just around the corner, so I figured out that, working with a technology with, that is really behind Bitcoin could actually sort of, help me narrow the gap between what I wanted to achieve and my ability to achieve it. And that's where I started building a blockchain platform. So we're talking about 10 years ago. And, we were alone out there, and there was nobody going into that segment. So everything that we've built until now is based on blockchain, and it's currently powered by artificial intelligence.
But what does Pi do? What does it do for an individual in Africa?
I mean, what I wanted essentially to do is to have a platform that could combine identity and financial services. And this is something that is crucial near on the market, and a lot of things on, a lot of challenges with KYC right now, and the fact that you've got document going from one platform to another, and I figured out that time that if everybody went the blockchain road, essentially, you will not have to exchange documents from one platform to another. So for instance, if you have your driving license on the blockchain and you need to open a bank account somewhere, so basically all you need to do is to share those credentials with the bank. You don't have to give them a copy, of passport, a copy of different things, because they're on the blockchain, and you'll be able to share them or have anyone verify them just on the fly. And this is where I was interested. Of course, a lot of ramifications when you go deep into how you go off achieving those goals. And but this is what I was interested in, because I felt that there were as well a number of things that that you couldn't achieve with legacy systems. A bit like I was mentioning about, 85% of adults with a bank account in Africa are marginalized when using a traditional credit scoring system. So you need to.
Before we come back to Jalak, let me just ask you this with Pi. So how far have you got so far?
We've been up and running for a decade now.
I know, but how many clients? How many countries?
Yeah, we have 12 million people using Paiblock in 104 countries.
Wow, very impressive, very impressive. Okay, we'll come back to that. All right, Jalak,
US and Europe.
You've got 40 portfolio companies, every one doing either blockchain or AI, if I understand you right. Can you highlight a few that you think will make the biggest difference to Africa, particularly kind of the bottom of the pyramid? And then also, is there is a company either an AI company or a blockchain company, or is there kind of does AI and blockchain somehow intersect in some of these use cases?
So when I launched the fund in 2014, the thesis was that we were going to see a convergence of these, what I consider new platform technologies, because you have these Internet of Things, these sensors, right? These devices all over the world that are collecting data. Now that data needs to be routed and analyzed and transacted with to have maximum impact. And that's where then, machine learning comes in, and then the blockchain comes in and making sure that the integrity of the data that's being collected and transacted with, remains and is not hackable. So for me, it's very much about the intersection. Now, until about a year or two ago, we were seeing very much of a separation of these technologies. And we're really starting to see that convergence start to happen, which is really exciting. And part of it is because blockchain tech as open source tech is developing so quickly, probably quicker than any other technology I've ever seen in my career, and because we have so many minds around the world working on improving it. So the pace of innovation is beyond anything I've seen before, and that's really exciting because there's a lot of creation and code being built in places like Africa where it's you kind of have a blank slate, unlike legacy systems in the U.S. Like just hearing Mark talk about his company, right? Like we have a KYC system that's very kind of antiquated in a lot of the developed markets, and the opportunity, just like mobile leapfrog landlines, I see and our thesis has always been that blockchain tech can leapfrog these legacy databases and systems that just don't make as much sense anymore. So along those lines, I mentioned BitPesa, Aza, they've been operational since 2013, and we invested in 2014. And they were one of the first to look at how can we reduce, financial transaction fees by using, Bitcoin initially as the FX transaction. So instead of having to go through multiple banks and correspondent banks to transfer money, let's just, bring it down to one transaction or two where, conversion to a crypto and out of a crypto. And they handled all that for the clients. So you didn't necessarily have to expose yourself to the volatility of the crypto. You could if you wanted to, which, some people chose to hold, Bitcoin. And so they've expanded to kind of be, offering a broader platform, just, beyond just the Bitcoin blockchain. But bringing fees that were sometimes up to 20%, down to 3% or less, and not only for individuals but also for multinationals who then can be more efficient in reaching their ultimate customers. And so, what I find exciting too is that this is a solution for the small business owner, the individual, but it's also something that multinationals have really found to be important for their business and transacting with companies and in Africa or employees in Africa. So that's one that we've seen tremendous growth, and especially through COVID, there's less reliance. Like there's a dollar shortage in the early days, like back in March and April, and so by bypassing the necessity to hold dollars or transact in dollars, they were also able to allow these transactions to continue going smoothly, where other entities that weren't their clients were having to face the dollar shortage.
Okay, I'm going to come back to you about the AI space after I talk to Mark. But we're actually the cost to the Africa of using US dollar in trading. So it's very, and I'm actually a BitPesa client, so very good to hear.
Oh, that's great to hear. That's great.
I've been paid in Naira, and sometimes I need something that's not Naira. So, okay. So, Mark, I wanted to ask you, you've had great success with this, but a lot of the very good ideas I find in fintech or KYC, blockchain in general, get held up by either the government or by the existing kind of financial players. And so, Mark, in the development of Paiblock, I'm just kind of curious how you've overcome some of these barriers in your journey over the last decade. Mark, can you hear me?
Not really. You were breaking up, so I couldn't get most of the question.
Okay, sorry, Mark. This question's for you. So listen the best you can with my bad technology, which was supposed to be a new computer from PwC, but I'm not sure what they sent me. Okay, so the question is, a lot of the things you're trying to do are very beneficial to humanity in Africa, but and oftentimes there's barriers from the government or from the existing financial players. Sometimes the government not actively blocking it, but more just because of inertia and maybe lack of skills in some areas. I'm just curious in your journey over the last 10 years, how you've dealt with the barriers of trying to get Paiblock developed and some of these more innovative things that really benefit the bottom of the pyramid through regulation, through the government, dealing with the big banks, et cetera.
Right. I mean, the barriers are still there, and the plenty. I mean, a lot of them, a whole lot of them to overcome. And so it's not a freeway where we can just go off and ride. So it's still pretty much difficult to do what we're doing today. I mean, in terms of from infrastructure point of view, but also in terms of legal point of view. But the good news is a lot of things have changed in the meantime. I mean, right now, for instance, we are supervised by the Financial Services Authority, and that means that we have come on the main, we are on Main Street, so to speak. That wasn't possible a couple of years ago, and because anything that had to do with crypto, that even had to do with blockchain, could not get a bank license or get supervised by the Financial Services Authority. That has changed, and it changed primarily beginning of last year. And there's more and more regulation coming towards crypto companies and blockchain companies, and which are not longer left on the sideline. But I mean, it took 10 years, and I think there's still a lot out there to do, and there's still a lot of acceptance and a lot of adoption to to go off and achieve.
So I said one follow-up question before I go back to Jalak. So in terms of the countries in Africa where you're working, is there a country that's the most advanced thinking in terms of innovation?
Definitely South Africa.
Oh, okay. Outside of South Africa. South Africa is a unique case. So what about Kenya, Tanzania, Ghana?
I think Kenya is definitely coming out. There's a task force, a blockchain task force in place. There's a blockchain task force in Ghana as well. And but I feel that it goes too slow. It's definitely too slow. So if we want to follow development at that pace, obviously it's going to take another 10 years to get there. And I think that a lot of countries are trying to do. I've been around talking with a few countries, particularly in Eastern Africa. Kenya as well was one of them, interested in creating a cryptocurrency, a national sovereign cryptocurrency, and we've been talking to two of us, and that wanted to create cryptocurrencies. So I think that there is definitely. Things have begun to work a bit more differently, and people feel that there's a need to get there. But we always get down to the same problem, and that's the same thing when you talk with banks in Africa. They say, "Well, we would love to, onboard these guys, but there are 600 million of them don't have an ID. What do you want us to do?"
Right.
And another thing when you say, "Why you not?" People. What about access to credit? And you get the same story. Well, there's only 15% are bankable. So, and it's not because they're not bankable. They're actually somewhere around 50% of Africans that are credit worthy. But the problem is that if you use a traditional scoring system, obviously that is leaving them aside. Because in a traditional credit scoring system, anything that has a short, little, or no credit history is high risk. And nobody will onboard them. And that's the reason why artificial intelligence has to come into picture and actually assess credit worthiness based on real facts in real time, and onboard those that are credit worthy and that are still otherwise left on the side.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, I think so many times in Africa, successful companies are pushed to do bigger and bigger things because they have to create the whole ecosystem. I mean, if you think about some other markets, you can focus on your niche. If you try to do it, for example, if you wanted to do, lending, blockchain lending, you now find out identity is the problem. So now you have Paiblock have to go out and solve the identity problem, which you're doing. So, Jalak, so give us some examples in the few minutes of how your portfolio companies are using AI to do very cool things that really solve problems for the bottom of the pyramid.
Yeah, so we have a company that's actually operating out of Nepal and New York that is training AI talent and then kind of placing them with local companies and banks in different regions, and they've worked in Rwanda, they've worked in the DRC, and then helping, and this is the shortage of AI talent is kind of everywhere. It's in the United States. It's all over the world, and this is again looking at how can we start using AI to solve problems that are very local, such as credit, and a lot of the challenge has been the talent hasn't been there because it's just fairly. Now, I'd say fairly applied AI is a fairly newer area of kind of technology training worldwide. So they've kind of gone in and saying we're going to help train and then place these folks to create solutions in local markets. We have a number of companies in the financial services space that are working on credit, working on also identifying customers for different products. I think financial literacy is another element, which I look at the challenges that the continent faces in Africa, but a lot of these are challenges that are in the United States too. Post 2008, we've had a huge underbank, increasing underbank population, credit history, building credit, access to credit's become an issue. So and I actually think I've always looked to Africa, I'd say more so than even India or, Southeast Asia and Indonesia to say, they're ground zero for mobile payments and how people can adopt and use mobile payments. And so in some of these other areas where AI, can be useful, such as what Mark's been talking about, and in financial services, where can we build companies, or where can we find the entrepreneurs to invest in places like Africa? Because I feel like a lot of those models are going to eventually come to the U.S. Healthcare is another area. I know, we're running out of time, but healthcare is another area where, identifying high-risk populations, based on their history. And so again, you look at financial history, you need to look at healthcare history. You don't have the databases that exist, but by people answering questions, and incentivizing people to answer questions and then analyzing their answers, it helps identify who's at high risk for, and so I think that facility with mobile is tremendously helpful for the continent, in a way that I think people in the United States have had to learn, because they haven't necessarily interacted. We've seen this during COVID,
Right.
And so a lot of these new business models will come from places like Africa.
Okay, let me stop you there. Mark, you've got 51 seconds to give the final word here. What's your message to let's say the policymakers of Africa when they think about these issues?
Well, I would say to them, you guys got 600 million people undocumented that don't legally exist. Get on some blockchain system and set them up so that get them to exist legally, and from there they'll be able to access financial services, health services. I mean, everything is based on legal existence. If you don't have one, so obviously it's not where you can access anything out there. And I think this would be a good point for them to start.
Very wise words. It's hard to imagine coming from some countries that people would not have a legal existence, but that's where it's to start. I think the system's going to turn off in 2 seconds. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, everyone. You just fantastic contributions. I look forward to interacting with you beyond this event. You've both done such amazing things in 2 areas that are going to make such a difference. And of course, I'm based in Lagos. We have the biggest needs of anyone. So God bless.
All right, take care.